quorum of commissioners, I believe, and there may be more on the phone. So good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting on May 12th of the Water Quality Control Commission. My name is Jennifer Pruitt. Has joined the meeting. My name is Jennifer Pruitt. I am the Deputy Secretary at the Environment Department and Chair of the Commission. So I'm calling the Commission to order now at 9:01 in the morning, and I'm going to ask Commission Administrator Cody Barnes to please call the roll.
Alrighty. I will do this alphabetically just so it's easier for everyone. Commissioner Candelaria. Commissioner Sturton.
Here.
Commissioner Dominguez.
Here.
Commissioner
Join the meeting.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here.
Commissioner McWilliams.
I'm here.
Commissioner Musharrafi.
Here.
Commissioner Patton.
Here.
Madam Chair Pruitt.
I'm here.
Commissioner Rader.
Here.
Commissioner Cipher.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Simmons.
Romero.
Has joined the meeting.
Commissioner Wade.
Here.
All right, here I'm just going to go back to the two that I'm not sure are here. Commissioner Candelaria.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. And then Commissioner Thompson. All right. Well, in any case, we have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. So I would like to review sort of our procedure for holding our virtual meetings. We did one last month, and we found the following to be helpful. So I would appreciate it if everybody would mute themselves unless they are speaking, and this will significantly lower the amount of background noise and help us hear each other. And working with our attorney and the Attorney General's Office Open Government Division, they've advised us that we may hold meetings virtually if we have time-sensitive matters. We have two matters on our agenda today that are time-sensitive, WQCC 20-16 and 20-18, which have been recently filed, and we must schedule a hearing within 90 days for them. If technical difficulties arise, we do have an IT person from the Environment Department on call throughout this WebEx meeting. Lori Gasca, her number is 505-231-0914. That number's on the agenda and the public notice of the meeting, and it's on the Commission website if anyone needs that help. Our administrator, Cody Barnes, is also available. His cell phone number is 505-660-4305. IT and Lori are your best choice because Cody has to take minutes and do a number of other things during this meeting. We still require rules of decorum in these hearings and that everybody behave professionally. There will be time for public comment, as we always have in our public meetings. It's number 4 on the agenda. So if you wish to make a public comment, please refrain from speaking until we get to that point in the meeting. It'll come up pretty quickly. We need people to speak one at a time so that everyone can hear and understand each other. Another reminder to mute yourself when you're not speaking. And Be sure to identify yourselves when you speak. This goes for commissioners too. We need to remember that there are many call-in users and participants in this meeting who cannot see anyone on the screen and may not recognize voices. So it's very important for the record and for the public attending by telephone that we identify ourselves before we speak. And this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on our WQCC website as soon as possible. Cody, I believe you were able to post the last recording as a YouTube video, so do you want to say something about that, please?
Yeah. So I was able to post it on the NMED YouTube channel, which then I linked on the WQCC webpage. And I believe that I linked it on the very first page for the WQCC website, which you can get to by going to the NMED and then going through the traditions and finding the WQCC there. I'm going to leave the recordings on there. There's no reason to take it off. So the last meeting is still on there, and when this meeting is done, it will be on there as well.
Great, thank you, Cody. That's a nice option for people. Okay. Phew, there was quite a background noise that just stopped. So, that was number 1 on our agenda, calling to order. Number 2, approval of the agenda. That was sent out to commissioners. It's on the website. I would love a motion by someone to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, this is David Cyber.
Has joined the meeting.
Commissioner Cipher. Yes.
Yes, I would so move that we approve the provided agenda.
Thank you.
Howard, second.
Thank you, Commissioner Hutchinson, for seconding. Mr. Barnes, would you please call the roll vote on that, please?
I will, yeah. Alrighty. Commissioner Candelaria.
Yes.
Commissioner Sturton.
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes.
Commissioner McWilliams.
Yes.
Commissioner Musharrafi.
Yes.
Commissioner Patton.
Yes.
Madam Chair Pruitt.
Yes.
Commissioner Rader.
Yes.
Commissioner Cipher.
Yes.
And I just got an email from Commissioner Thompson. He says that he has joined, so I will also mark him as here. And then Commissioner Thompson, we are voting on approving the agenda. And what's your vote on that?
Yes.
Alrighty. Commissioner Timmons?
Yes.
And Commissioner Wade?
Yes.
Alrighty, the motion passes.
Thank you very much. We will proceed with number 3 on the agenda, approval of the minutes from the April 14th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion on those minutes?
Howard moves to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dominguez seconds that motion.
Thank you, Commissioners Hutchinson and Dominguez. Commissioners, does anyone have any comments or edits for the meeting minutes? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. I did not have any edits either. So let's have a roll call vote on approval of the minutes, please, Mr. Barnes.
All right. Commissioner Candelaria.
Yes.
Commissioner Sturton.
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes.
Commissioner McWilliams.
Yes.
Commissioner Musharrafi.
Yes.
Commissioner Patton,
Yes.
Commissioner Pruitt, or Madam Chair Pruitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Rader,
Yes.
Commissioner Cypher,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Timmons,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wade. Was that a yes?
Yes, sorry.
Alrighty. The motion passes.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. So now we have the time in our meeting where we allow members of the public to give us public comment. Is there anyone on this call or WebEx that would like to make a public comment? I'm going to give it a few minutes just in case anyone's having a little technical difficulty. I'll also let people know along the bottom of your WebEx screen, there's a series of circles and there's a blue one with something that looks like a little comment bubble. That's the chat bubble. If you click on that, you can get both Cody's phone number and the phone number of IT if you need help. And if you have some technical issue or something you want to mention in the chat that everyone can see, please feel free to use that. So I have not heard, but I will just give one more chance. If there's any member of the public that would like to make public comment, please speak up now. All right, I don't think we have anyone. So next on our agenda is adoption of the 2020 Open Meetings Act resolution. This is a requirement of the Open Meetings Act that each public body adopt a resolution like that each year. We have gone back and forth on a number of drafts. The Commission had the latest one a little over a week ago, and I will ask our Commission Counsel, Robert Sanchez, if he would like to introduce or provide any additional information on that resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, Chairperson Pruitt. Good morning, everyone. Chairperson Pruitt and I basically had, or I should say, had two basic approaches or views on how to proceed on this matter. If I can go back as a point of beginning to a observation that Commissioner Dominguez made at the March 12th, 2020 meeting regarding during a discussion of a previous draft of the annual resolution. And his observation or comment was that the annual resolution should not reference any specific individuals or the particular contact information. In this case, we're referring to Cody Barnes, because that individual might leave state government employment during the year in which the resolution was in effect, or during the year that it had been passed and adopted for, and then the Commission, as a consequence of having that person-specific information, would have to go back and amend that legal document to conform to the change that had occurred. In my view, the same reasoning should have applied to the annual resolution. And this is where Chairperson Pruitt and I diverged. What she did in the version that's before you today basically incorporates, other than what is statutorily required under the Open Meetings Act, some provisions that address the ongoing COVID-19 situation and how the Commission proceeds to transact its business. Really using as a springboard the reasoning Commissioner Dominguez articulated regarding the person-specific information. My view was that rather than merge what was required by statute and what is now required by the ongoing COVID-19 epidemic, and it's, I think, a very fluid situation, changes almost weekly, that we should actually bifurcate the two and have one, the annual resolution that spoke entirely to the statutory requirements, and in Chairperson Pruitt's view, one that incorporated the the present needs because of the ongoing COVID-19 epidemic. What you have before you is the latter of the two. When I spoke with Chairperson Pruitt at the time and when I sent my comments to her, there was in the works another advisory from the Attorney General's office similar to what you're seeing as Agenda Item 5. This particular advisory, and it's still being reviewed by the folks upstairs over at the Attorney General's office, but basically it was a follow-up advisory to the previous one. This one spoke specifically to two items, rulemaking by public bodies and adjudicatory hearings conducted by public bodies. My thinking was if we had that second advisory and the, if you will, statutorily pure annual resolution, that would be entirely sufficient. But Chairperson Pruitt and I spoke yesterday, and our discussion went pretty much this way. I think we can have the annual resolution that's been presented to you as drafted by Chairperson Pruitt. We'll have the forthcoming, hopefully, second advisory that speaks to rulemaking and adjudication. And using those two as guideposts, we can have really a point of beginning. And then as we go forward with specific cases, we can essentially tailor the requirements or the responses regarding OMA compliance, regulatory compliance under the Water Quality Act, statutory compliance, to fit the particular needs of that particular matter that's before the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. I would just add, in response to the point that Mr. Sanchez raised, we have now created a new generic email for all our boards and commissions. I included in a number of places on this Open Meetings Act resolution. It's capital TUB.facilitation@state.nm.us. So we have in fact created a new generic email that does not involve anybody's particular name. And that turned out to be a very good thing because Cody Barnes has now, as we all feared, but nonetheless congratulate him on, Cody has been accepted to law school, which he will start in the fall, and so we will be losing him as our able administrator. We will have him at our next June meeting. And then I can assure you I am feverishly working on a plan B for the next administrator and support for the Commission and all our other boards and serviced by the Environment Department. So, Commissioners,
congratulate Cody. This is Chairman Wade. Sorry, Commissioner Wade.
yes, congratulations, Cody. We are a victim of your success, and we wish you all the best. You've done a fantastic job in your year with us. So, back to the Open Meetings Act resolution. Any motions to get us started?
Madam Chair, for the purpose of discussion, I move to approve.
Thank you, and that was Commissioner Hutchinson. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Madam Chair, this is Timmons. I'm having technical difficulties. There's a typo. COVID-10.
Wow. We'll find it and correct it. Thank you. I see it, yes. Thank you. Does anyone want to second Commissioner Hutchinson's motion so we can then move to discussion?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Thompson. I second the motion, and I have a question.
Shoot, give us your question, Commissioner Thompson.
I am on another, I'm looking at item number 4 on, I guess it's the second page. It talks about notice of the meeting. I'm on another board, and our open meetings resolution requires
publication in a paper, in the legal notices of paper of record. And I wonder, do we need to have some type of publication such as that?
Commissioner Thompson, in general, no. And whenever a meeting is before the Water Quality Control Commission, that involves any kind of substantive decision, whether it's a rulemaking or an adjudicatory matter, those matters, the public hearing before the commission, the group, usually the Environment Department or another petitioner, must publish public notice of the public hearing on that matter before the commission, and that is published in the newspaper. So, it has been the commission's practice and supported by the Attorney General over the years that the notice of the meetings themselves are electronic and posting on various doors and places, and but not published in the newspaper, primarily because of the expense. And I don't know if Commissioner Dominguez or Mr. Sanchez would like to speak to that, but or if other commissioners have comments or about that particular matter.
Chairperson, this is Robert Sanchez. May I speak to that, please?
Sure, please.
If you look at the Open Meetings Act statute, it doesn't specifically require publication in newspapers of general circulation. That certainly is the default or common practice, but it's not required by statute. What underlies this particular consideration is really a balance between the gravity, if you will, of the business that's being transacted by the public body in that particular instance, or generally, in this case, we're looking at the very extensive powers and duties of the Commission under the Water Quality Act, and then really, as Chairperson Ford has spoken, the very real consideration of cost considerations. And we had this discussion. We discussed this matter at some length at the March 10th hearing, and the NMED really isn't in a position to fund periodic publication in newspapers of general circulation. So what we really did is, in redrafting the resolution, is to build in other sorts of sufficiency, if you will, of public notice. And what Chairperson Ford just spoke to really is a second tier of providing public notice by statute, by regulation, whether it's an adjudicatory matter or a rulemaking matter. There's very specific provisions in statute and regulation that provide very extensive public notice. So I think, given the balancing, considering the two, or rather balancing the two considerations, looking at the practicality of the cost to publication in the newspapers, and that second tier, if you will, of public notice, a very extensive and specific public notice, we're okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to the publication question?
Madam Chair, not to the question of publication, but I'll hold off if there's others that have questions on that. But I do have some other issues.
Yes, Commissioner Hutchinson, hold on just a second. Commissioner Dominguez, were you trying to get a word in there?
No, I think council covered it thoroughly, so I think we're in good shape there regarding the publication portion.
All right, so thank you, Commissioner Dominguez. Does any other commissioner have any comment about newspaper publication? All right, why don't we move to your questions or comments, Commissioner Hutchinson?
Very good. On page 3, under item 10, going to the issue of not naming Cody specifically and making that generic, should this item 10 be generic as well? So it would say, during the pendency of a public or a pendency of a public emergency declared by the governor, the commissioner may hold virtual meetings, etc. So that we could utilize this as an ongoing item 10 for this and future Open Meetings Act resolutions.
Commissioner Hutchinson, if that is the commission's wish, we could certainly make this a little bit more generic. My thought was that since this is sort of an extraordinary method of holding a meeting and a hearing and a very unusual situation right now in 2020, and that this is a 2020 Open Meetings Act resolution, I was trying to really keep it as narrow as possible for the current situation through the end of the year. But it would be a perfectly acceptable alternative method to just make it a little bit more generic to allow it if needed in future years. Do other commissioners have thoughts about that?
Madam Chair, Larry Dominguez, on that point, and following up from the Commission's counsel, his original statement, we, on page 1, under the fifth whereas, does that need to be modified in any sense to address two situations? If the Attorney General comes out with additional guidance, as Commission Counsel indicated, and if the Governor issues any additional executive orders, then we need to make that whereas a little more generic so that we're not coming back again to revise.
Commissioner Dominguez, when I drafted it, my intent was that whereas clause reflect what has happened. And that paragraph, I believe, addresses exactly what has happened. The governor issued that order. The Attorney General's office issued guidance. To me, paragraph 10, which is what says what we do, is broader and talks about the pendency of the ongoing public health emergency and talks about in accordance with the Attorney General's guidance. Maybe that would be the place to broaden, instead of saying the Attorney General's guidance, to say any Attorney General's guidance, so that it would include guidance that comes in after we adopt this resolution. Somebody needs to mute because we're hearing a lot of background rustling. Because it's my thought that we do not have a crystal ball. We do not know what's going to happen for the remainder of this year. And we don't know if state buildings are going to open and when. We don't know what protocol for mass gatherings or people meeting in offices or buildings. For example, if face coverings were required and we were trying to meet in the state capitol, that would be a pretty awkward and muffled communication into our microphones. And even if everything opens up and we could have our normal meeting, all 13 of us plus hangers-on up on the dais there might still be at-risk individuals who were not yet comfortable attending an in-person meeting. And so my feeling is that we need to continue to offer remote and virtual options to make sure that at-risk members of the public who want to be able to hear or participate in our public meetings and our public hearings can still do so safely. So my goal with this was simply to say we have all these different options, and as the public health guidance and directives from both the governor's office, the Department of Health, and also from the AG's office, as those guidances develop and come forth, we will make decisions about how we hold each meeting, how we hold each public hearing, and whether in any of those circumstances we offer in-person or online or teleconference option. And my goal is, when I wrote this, was that we would allow all possible options so we have as much flexibility as possible moving forward through the year. And I'd be happy to hear, suggested edits or changes from you all if there's a way you see to make that more flexible. Or if you don't think that flexibility is appropriate, we could do it in a different way.
Madam Chair, Larry Dominguez, very good point you made there. In rereading that, I agree with your point under the whereas that that's kind of a water that's already under the bridge, so the focus should be on item 10. So I'm good with the edits that have been made thus far, and would agree that the whereas section does not need to be altered other than the edit Commissioner Timmons mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners have comments or suggestions on this document?
Hi, Madam Chair. This is Commissioner Candelaria. I'd like to make a comment.
Please do.
Okay, these are just grammatical suggestions. Under point 6, at the end of the paragraph, I think we're missing a period there.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yes, and then under point 7, the second sentence reads, copies of the meeting notice and agenda shall also, I'm sorry, I'll say again, copies of the meeting notice and agenda shall also, I think it's supposed to be posted, but I think we switched the words around there. It says posted B.
Yes, thank you.
And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Candelaria. I appreciate a good proofreader. Thank you. Any other comments, commissioners?
Madam Chair, Larry Dominguez again. I want to get a clarification from you on page 1, item 2. So we stated there that at least 10 days prior to the meeting, that there shall be a notice that includes an agenda containing a list of the specific items to be discussed. And then further into that paragraph, it indicates, except in a case of emergency, at least 72 hours prior to the meeting, the agenda shall be available to the public. So the 10 days and the 72 hours almost seem to conflict. If we follow the specific 10 days as it's written there, where an agenda has to be posted with the specific items of business, then the 72-hour statement would seem to conflict with that, or vice versa. And where I'm coming from on this, I completely agree with providing ample notice to the public as far as a meeting. But from the flip side of that, for the parties that are bringing items before the commission, there are many, many times that within that 10-day period, some type of filing needs to be made by the parties. And if we're rigid with the 10 days for the agenda, that would preclude a party that may need to file something within that 10-day period from being able to do that. I'm not for sure that we're actually trying to preclude somebody from filing within that 10-day period. The concern lies with the wording there, that it might be interpreted that way. Maybe you can provide some clarification. Maybe I'm just misreading that.
I think I agree that a person could read it in the way that you say. The 2019 Open Meetings Act resolution of the commission and prior ones simply said an agenda 72 hours ahead of time, but it has been the commission's practice to put out a draft agenda in 10 days ahead. As you know, and we all know, sometimes matters drop off because things are settled and we don't end up having a hearing on at a meeting we expected, or something new gets filed, 9 days before the meeting, and then we want to put it on the agenda. Maybe we could take care of your problem by inserting the word draft in the second sentence of number 2, so that it would read, the meeting notice shall include a draft list, and then accepting cases of emergency, and then we could add the word the final agenda is available 72 hours. Would that take care of your concern, Commissioner Dominguez?
I believe so, Madam Chair, with one caveat. Under the second revision there, with the 72 hours, that may need to read final draft agenda, because technically the agenda is not final until it's approved by the commission on the day of the meeting.
All right.
I'm splitting hairs there, but maybe commission counsel might have some guidance.
Mr. Sanchez, would you like to weigh in on that question?
I would. Let me start with the reference in paragraph 2 to the 10 days. That has been determined by the Attorney General's office to constitute reasonable prior notice. And that's really become the customary period for giving notice. And it's incorporated, I think, in most public bodies' annual resolutions. Regarding the language that follows, that's taken verbatim, and I don't think we can alter it much. It's taken from 1015-1 subsection F, and I'll read, and you can track what's on the resolution with what's in the statute as I do that. Meeting notices shall include an agenda containing a list of specific items of business to be discussed or transacted at the meeting, or information on how the public may obtain a copy of such an agenda. Except in the case of an emergency or in the case of a public body that ordinarily meets more frequently once a week, that doesn't apply here. At least 72 hours prior to the meeting. So reading that with the inapplicable portion left out. Except in the case of an emergency, at least 72 hours prior to the meeting, the agenda shall be available to the public and posted on the public body's website if one is maintained as it is here. So the 10 days is what really has been what is customarily constitutes reasonable notice. The rest of the language really is verbatim from subsection F of section 1015.1.
Commissioner Dominguez, I would recommend that we leave those phrases in the way they are, written. I don't think we can go wrong with following the Open Meetings Act. And I guess, from my perspective, I would like to give the public and parties as much information as possible as far in advance of our meetings as possible. So I would like there to be a draft agenda 10 days ahead, but I know that we need the flexibility to put out the final agenda the 72 hours ahead of time, precisely because of reasons like newly filed matters or matters dropping off that are no longer before us. So, and I would like, does that help you understand why it's written like that, Commissioner Dominguez?
Absolutely, and I completely agree. We want the best of both worlds. My concern was whether we placed ourselves in a legal quagmire. And understand council's point about the wording under the 72-hour. And if we need to leave that as is because it's verbatim. And with that, if inserting the word draft, as you indicated on page 1, that would keep us legally online, I think that would address it.
All right, so we put the word draft into the second sentence before agenda on page 1, and we put the word final in the first full sentence on page 2 that starts, except in the case of an emergency at least 72 hours prior to the meeting, the final agenda shall be available to the public.
And actually, based on Commission Council's comments about the 72-hour statement being verbatim, potentially relieve that as is without inserting the word final. We just insert the word draft on page 1 as you indicated.
All right. Any other comments from...
Madam Chair, this is Howard. I would suggest that on page 2, the second line, where it starts, the public may obtain a copy of such and it should be a draft agenda to conform with the first part on page 1.
All right.
And Madam Chair, I think that the way that this is divided up, the or information on how the public may obtain a copy of such a draft agenda makes it optional, even though the word shall is in the first part of that sentence. So we could publish a notice of the meeting, not include a draft agenda, but also we could inform the public on how to obtain a draft agenda. Anyway, no more discussion for me. That's it for me.
Has joined the meeting.
I would move that we approve the publication of the Open Meetings Act Resolution number 2020-02 as amended.
I would second that motion, Mr. Commissioner Dominguez.
All right. Any further discussion? Mr. Sanchez, yes?
Just a point of clarification. I think it's fine for the commission to move, take a second, and vote. I just want to clarify that we can take the resolution that's before the commission now and make the really technical or textual changes, and that won't affect the action of the commission. So if the commission will allow us, we will allow it to proceed with voting on the item, and then Chairperson Pruitt and I will go back with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that the textual corrections and other matters that were discussed are put into what is actually signed by the chair.
That was exactly my plan. So, but I just wanted to review the matters that were discussed to make sure we all are on the same page. There was a typo in the last whereas clause, that's COVID-10. On number 2, we're going to insert the word draft before agenda in the second sentence. On number 6, we're going to add a period at the end of the last sentence. In paragraph 7, we're going to flip posted in B so that it reads that an agenda shall also be posted on the Commission's website. And then on number 10, instead of specifically referring to the ongoing public health emergency and the governor's executive order, we're going to broaden it to during the pendency of a public emergency declared by the governor. And in the last sentence, we're going to broaden the Attorney General's guidance so it refers to is conducted in accordance with any Attorney General's guidance. So those are the matters that I have that we would change. Does anybody have any comments on that before we vote?
Chairperson Pruitt, again, Council, my understanding had been or was that with respect to paragraph 2, the second sentence, it would reference a draft agenda.
Yes, I thought I mentioned that, yes.
And just not to put too fine of a point on things, my preference would be that we refer to that as a proposed agenda rather than a draft agenda.
Okay, that sounds like a good, I like that, thank you.
All right, that's all I have.
Madam Chair, this is Howard. I will modify my motion to make that reflection.
Thank you, Commissioner Hutchinson. Do we have a second?
Second from Commissioner Dominguez on modification.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioners? All right, Mr. Barnes, would you call the roll, please?
Okay, Commissioner Candelaria,
Yes.
Commissioner Sturgeon,
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez,
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson,
Yes.
Commissioner McWilliams,
Yes.
Commissioner Mucciaraki,
Yes.
Commissioner Patton,
Yes.
Madam Chair Pruitt,
Yes.
Commissioner Rader,
Yes.
you kind of broke up. Was that a yes?
Yes. Yes, it was a yes.
Commissioner Cipher,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Timmons,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Alrighty, it passes.
Thank you. I'm glad we have accomplished that task. So next on our agenda is a review of our schedule for June, July, and August from Administrator Barnes and what hearings and matters we have on our calendar. We have a couple of new items filed that we're going to need to schedule, and we actually have quite a few pending matters on our docket. I thought it would be helpful to review what's pending so we can sort of think about how we're going to space these out. So, Administrator Barnes.
Yeah, okay, so I sent out an upcoming schedule, which of course has now changed slightly since I sent it. But so I think I'll just go numerically, and that seems the easiest. So WQCC 20-04, which is for Acme Hometime Cleaners. For that, that's also on the agenda to kind of review and when we would like that to go. And so that originally was scheduled for this meeting. But then due to kind of of course, the pending circumstances, we decided not to hold it this meeting. And so the parties in this have come together, and the earliest that they're willing to meet, it seems, is July 14th, which is the July meeting. And so everyone's agreed to that, at least not necessarily the commission, but all the parties involved. And so then the next would be WQCC 20-07, which is a construction program bureau rulemaking. And so that one is scheduled also for the July meeting, which is 7/14. And so, also here, let me step back for a second. So for the 20-04, there needs to be a 30-day notice needs to be published 30 days before the hearing. So that is kind of which would be, if say, for example, we have the July meeting, that would need to be published by the, I think, 14th of June. And so then now to jump again to WQCC 20-07. So that hearing is for the 14th of July. And as a rulemaking, it has to be published, notice has to be published 60 days in advance. And so there are a few kind of requirements. It's already published in the New Mexico Register, and then it's set to be published in newspapers, I believe, later on this week. So that's kind of charging ahead. And then WQCC 20-08. This was originally scheduled for next month's meeting, which would have been the 9th of June. However, one of the parties filed a request to continue the hearing until August, and the hearing officer for that has granted that request. And that happened last week, maybe on the 6th of May. And so now that hearing is scheduled for August 11th, which is also during the August meeting. And then we had WQCC 20-14, and we had scheduled that last meeting, but then the petitioner withdrew their petition, so that is no longer a matter in front of us. And then the two ones that we are also going to discuss later on today, which is WQCC 2016, which is for Matador San Mateo Midstream. This is a compliance order, and so we need to publish notice at least 30 days before the hearing. And then the next one is WQCC 20-18, which is proposed amendments to 20.6.4.9 NMAC for the Upper Pecos watershed. And so as a rulemaking, this needs to have 60 days, public notice published 60 days in advance. So those are kind of the upcoming things for these next coming months.
Madam Chair, this is Howard.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes. In regards to the Canon Air Force Base, and that is the item 2008. When we had discussion about this at a previous meeting when we were setting the schedule, I expressed dismay at the delays that had been put into place and requested that when we set the date that we not get any further delays on this. This is a serious issue, and I felt at that time that we have seen these types of delays created by council or other persons in getting compliance orders obeyed. So I just want to express my dismay at the hearing officer's allowance for this to be delayed until August. Thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson, I appreciate your concern about that and delays involved in compliance order appeals. I will tell you that there was a fairly extensive motion to continue the hearing filed by the Air Force attorney, referring to a lot of discovery that they feel they need to do. They are currently prohibited by federal directive from doing any traveling, and the attorneys felt that this was a hearing where it would be very important to appear in person and be able to see and question the witnesses. And it was just not believed that, I don't think their federal directive was going to have been lifted by the time of our June meeting. And because the notice would already have had to be filed, the hearing officer felt pressed to make that decision without being able to consult with the commission at this meeting. And this is another one of those situations where we really have to balance the importance of having these public hearings done in a way that does not that provides as much public notice, due process, and ability to meaningfully participate to all parties, including out-of-state counsel, out-of-state parties, and members of the public. So, essentially compelling the parties to hold the hearing before they felt they had had time. Understand why the hearing officer had a problem with that, and I would suggest that we support the hearing officer on that. If we have two parties agreeing to hold this hearing in August, And it's entirely possible that this will nonetheless in August have to be a virtual hearing. We're going to have to take this one day at a time and see how things develop. But in terms of not having this come up in the June hearing, I feel like our hands were a little tied on that. So that's just my 2 cents. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that. We just want to make sure that all of the parties feel they get their due process and that we have a meaningful method for public participation when we hold these adjudicatory hearings.
Madam Chair, this is Howard again. I would request that my dismay over this issue be recorded in our minutes to memorialize it in the record. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mr. Barnes, please note that and put it in the minutes. Commissioner Hudson. Thank you. All right. I just wanted to flip that for a minute and say, according to my understanding, at this time, the Commission does not have any public hearings scheduled for its June meeting. And in our July meeting, we have 2007, the Construction Programs Bureau rulemaking, where notice has already gone out, and we have the ACME Compliance Order Appeal 2004. At our August meeting, we have the Canon Air Force Base Compliance Order Appeal, which is 20-08. Is that how you see it, Cody?
Yes, that's how I see it.
Okay. So, do any commissioners have any questions about the June, July, August schedule?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Timmons.
Commissioner Timmons.
I would just request that those updates and modifications that Mr. Barnes presented be resent to us as soon as possible so we can prepare for these upcoming meetings.
You bet. We will. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? All right, so let's move to number 7 on our agenda, discussion of potential dates to reschedule the hearing on 20-04. Do we have Owen Johnson, Pete Domenici Jr., or Felicia Orth on this meeting?
Owen Johnson, I'm here.
Thank you. All right. And am I correct that the parties and the hearing officer are all in agreement that August 14 is, or I'm sorry, July 14 is the right time for us to put that on our agenda?
Yes, that's correct. We had a conference call about that and everybody agreed.
All right. And so I think my understanding is we do not need to take action on this. The hearing officer will issue a scheduling order and we will put it on our agenda. Is that correct? Do we need to take any action?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. That's how it looked to me too. All right. Any comments or questions about agenda item 7? All right, then let's look at agenda item 8. This is a request for hearing, WQCC number 20-16CO, New Mexico Environment Department Water Protection Division, Surface Water Quality Bureau versus Matador Production Company and San Mateo Midstream LLC. Do we have Andrew Knight, Counsel for the Environment Department?
Yes.
I see you. Welcome. Do we have Adam Rankin or Caitlin Lott, Counsel for Matador and San Mateo?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Adam Rankin with Holland and Hart appearing on behalf of respondents.
Good morning, Mr. Rankin. So, is there anything I guess I'll start with the Environment Department, Mr. Knight, and then I will give Mr. Rankin a chance to tell us about this request for hearing, what kind of timeline you're thinking of, and whether there is other public interest or potential parties that you are aware of that might want to participate in this matter.
Madam Chair, this is Andrew Knight. There are no other parties that we're aware of that have interest in this matter. And I think for our part, the department is, we're fairly flexible on the scheduling of the hearing. I'll let Mr. Rankin, as a respondent, have his input as well.
Mr. Rankin?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Knight. Yeah, we also are fairly flexible. I think it would be my preference and the respondent's preference. And I think it would make administrative sense for sake of efficiency to potentially push the hearing date back a bit. We have requested a status conference, a settlement conference with the department. We're hopeful that we will make significant progress towards potentially resolving our issues and the request for hearing. And so I think there's at least a chance that
has left the meeting.
If given the time, we may be able to resolve the issues in our request for hearing. So ask that to the extent it works with the commission scheduling and the requirements for the 90-day setting, that we push the hearing back as much as possible so that we can potentially resolve the matter.
All right. Thank you. We have June is too soon. There isn't time for 30 days of notice. July, we have 2 matters scheduled. And August, we have a 3-day, potentially up to 3-day hearing scheduled. It's kind of looking to me like September. We also need to appoint a hearing officer on this one. I was going to suggest that we appoint Richard Virtue, who was going to be the hearing officer in SNR Septic, a matter that is no longer pending. So it seemed like in sort of the rotation, maybe he would be next on this one. Do commissioners have any comments or discussion about scheduling this in September and appointing Richard Virtue as the hearing officer?
Madam Chair, this is Howard. I was wondering if we have the 90-day requirement as an issue in this for conducting the hearing.
We certainly do. And this, if we go with this date, that would be beyond the 90 days. I would ask the parties to let us know if they want to stipulate to an extension of that deadline, which I've seen in the past. It sounded to me like they were asking for additional time, but I will ask Mr. Knight and Mr. Rankin to speak about that.
Madam Chair, yes, we would stipulate to an extension of time for that.
Madam Chair, respondents as well. We hadn't yet discussed doing so, but we're happy to do that. I think it would potentially make sense for us to push the date out, like I said, so that we could potentially resolve and obviate the need for any kind of hearing. Thank you.
So that was a yes, you will stipulate, not a yes, you want to discuss it?
Yeah, sorry, apologies. Yes, we'll stipulate to that request. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Dominguez, is that gonna, and Mr. Sanchez, if you want to weigh in on that question legally, I will give you both a chance to say something.
Madam Chair, Larry Dominguez, I think typically we get some type of a joint motion filed by the parties to codify that. Even though they've indicated it verbally, I think it's typically best to have that in writing. But that doesn't preclude the commission from moving forward today.
I agree, Commissioner Dominguez. And Mr. Rankin and Mr. Knight, I actually request that you get a stipulated order or a proposed order, joint order, to us, or motion or whatever, however you want to do it, but maybe get us something by the end of the week, and we will get that before I sign any order, if we approve having the hearing in September and appointing the hearing officer. All right?
Will do. Yes, Madam Chair.
Chairperson Pruitt?
Yes. Mr. Sanchez.
This is counsel. I'd ask both attorneys to actually submit or file a stipulated order that will include essentially what they've talked about, and also waiving any objections or to the continuation, please.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, understood.
Any further discussion, commissioners, or do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Howard. I would move that we grant a request for hearing on WQCC 20-60CO, and that the hearing be set for our September meeting date, and that the chair appoints the hearing officer for this meeting.
Second that motion, Larry Dominguez.
Any discussion, commissioners? All right. Mr. Barnes, would you read the roll, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Candelaria.
Yes.
Commissioner Sturton.
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes.
Commissioner McWilliams.
Yes.
Commissioner Musharraf.
Yes.
Commissioner Patton.
Yes.
Madam Chair Pruitt.
Yes.
Commissioner Rader.
Yes.
Commissioner Sniper.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Simmons.
Yes.
And Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners. One more question I should have asked before I let you go, Mr. Knight and Mr. Rankin, is I'd like to hear from each of you your estimate of how much time this hearing might take.
Madam Chair, this is Andrew Knight. I would say 1 day or 6 hours.
Mr. Rankin?
I think we could accomplish what we need to accomplish within a 6-hour hearing.
Thank you. That's very helpful because now we're going to move on to our next matter. And there could be a possibility, depending on how long that one is, of perhaps scheduling these at the same time. So it's always helpful to have a time estimate. Thank you for that. So now we will move on to number 9 on our agenda, the request for hearing filed in WQCC number 20-18R in the matter of the petition for proposed amendment to 20.6.4.9 NMAC designation of waters of the Upper Pecos watershed as outstanding national resource waters. Do we have John Verfuel, Counsel for the Environment Department?
Good morning, Madam Chair. Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Verfuel. And we have Eric Schlenker-Goodrich, Kelly Noakes, and/or Allison B.
Good morning, Madam Chair. This is Eric Schlenker-Goodrich with Washington Environmental Law Center.
Okay, so I see Kelly Noakes is on, but are you the spokesperson for the group?
Ms. Noakes will be the spokesperson, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So this is a rulemaking matter. It requires 60 days notice. I would like to give each lawyer a few minutes to please let us know a little bit about this matter and with your estimate of how long a hearing might be required and whether you are aware of other parties or other interests in this matter. Mr. Verfuel, why don't you, well, actually, Ms. Noakes, why don't you start because it was your petition.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kelly Noakes with the Western Environmental Law Center, and I'm joined here today, of course, with my co-counsel, Mr. Eric Schlenker-Goodrich. And we're here before you today representing the petitioners in the matter for the petition for proposed amendments to Section 20.6.4.9 of the New Mexico Administrative Code, requesting designation of waters of the Upper Pecos watershed as outstanding national resource waters. Today, we respectfully request the Commission schedule a hearing and appoint a hearing officer in this matter. First, I would like to briefly introduce you to our clients. This is a community-driven petition that's being brought forward by a diverse group of local government, business owners, and community organizations, many of which are here with us remotely today, including County Commissioner Janice Varela, representing petitioner San Miguel County, Mayor Ken Benavides, representing petitioner the Village of Pecos, Ms. Carla Garcia and Mr. Enrique Romero, representing petitioner the New Mexico Aceite Association, owner Ralph Vigil, for petitioner Molino de la Isla Organics, LLC, as well as Vice President Ms. Layla McFerrin and Board Member Ms. Carol Johnson for petitioner the Upper Pecos Watershed Association. To begin, I would just like to briefly provide some context for petitioner's substantive request. Petitioners are requesting that the Commission designate the waters of the Upper Pecos watershed as outstanding national resource waters, which are often referred to as ONRWs or outstanding waters, under New Mexico's water quality standards. You know, the Upper Pecos watershed is really the lifeblood of nearby communities and ecosystems. And these waters are among New Mexico's most outstanding aquatic resources for people, plants, and animals alike. For centuries, the watershed has supported thriving ecosystems and communities, as well as a very rich tradition of farming and ranching and other traditional uses, all of which depend on clean water. Thanks in part to a very long history of respect and stewardship among those that call the area home, most of the waters of the Upper Pecos remain very clean and healthy. However, despite its extraordinary recreational, ecological, and cultural significance, the Upper Pecos watershed is facing new challenges, both imminent and long-term. And one of the most effective ways to ensure clean water and resilient watersheds for present and future generations is to designate our cleanest, most treasured waters in the state as outstanding waters. An outstanding waters designation protects water quality by preventing further degradation, but while still respecting pre-existing and traditional land use activities, such as grazing and safety operations. These activities are allowed to continue after an outstanding waters designation is made. Outstanding waters designations are not new to New Mexico. The Commission has previously designated 3 other outstanding waters in the state, one including the Rio Santa Barbara in 2004, the waters of the Valley Vidal in 2005, and finally, all the perennial waters within the United States Forest Service wilderness area boundaries were designated as outstanding waters in the state in 2010. And, you know, indeed, portions of the Pecos River and its tributaries, those that are within the Pecos wilderness, are already designated as outstanding waters. Petitioners now propose to augment these protections by nominating as outstanding waters all surface waters of the Pecos River and its tributaries, both named and unnamed, including perennial, intermittent, and ephemeral streams and wetlands in the Upper Pecos watershed, watershed that is spanning from the U.S. Forest Service Dalton Day Use and Fishing Area, which is approximately 6 miles north of the village of Pecos, upstream to the boundary of the Pecos Wilderness. Now, notably, I would really just like to stress again that an outstanding waters designation would really serve to amplify and not limit current existing uses in the upper Pecos watershed by ensuring the protection and restoration of current water quality into the future. An outstanding waters designation for the upper Pecos would help to ensure that the watershed continues to flourish in harmony with thriving and resilient ecosystems for communities and generations to come. Now, the process for nominating an outstanding water is provided by Section 20.6.4.9 of the New Mexico Administrative Code, and those regulations provide that any person may nominate a surface water of the state for designation as an ONRW by filing a petition with the Commission. Here, we believe that we have placed before the Commission in our submission on April 20th all of the required components for nominating an outstanding water, and we hope that the Commission will consider this petition. So accordingly, we would really just like to request that the Commission schedule a hearing in this matter at a time that's convenient to both petitioners and the Commission. And for efficiency in our petition, we did request that the hearing commence in this fall, either in September or October, if the Commission schedule would so allow. However, we have already conferred with the New Mexico Environment Department, and the department has indicated its preference for scheduling the hearing in November or shortly thereafter, based on the department's schedule. And we will not oppose that request. So a hearing that commences in November or shortly thereafter would be acceptable to petitioners in this matter if the Commission schedule would so allow. Additionally, our petition requested the appointment of a hearing officer, and while we would be appreciative of working with any hearing officer that the Commission so designates, we have respectfully suggested that Ms. Felicia Orth be appointed the hearing officer for this matter. And this is primarily because Ms. Orth has served as the hearing officer in prior outstanding waters designations before this Commission. And thus, we believe that Ms. Orr's experience and familiarity with the outstanding waters designation process would prove beneficial to all parties involved. Unless Madam Chair or the Commissioners have any questions at this time, on behalf of petitioners, I thank you for your consideration of this matter and respectfully request that the Commission set this petition for hearing and appoint a hearing officer in this matter.
Sorry, you lost me for a moment. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Sorry, my computer freaked out, kicked me out. I just got back in, so glad we're here. Ms. Noakes, I'd ask the commissioners to hold their questions. I'd like Mr. Verhule on the Environment Department to give his perspective on this, and then we'll come back and allow the commissioners to ask any questions they have to both of you. The question that I have for you before I move to Mr. Verhule is how many days or how much time do you expect this hearing to last, and are you aware of parties or public participation that might be involved that could affect the length of the hearing?
We are not aware of any other parties other than the New Mexico Environment Department, which has already entered a notice of appearance in the matter. And we expect the hearing to last for approximately a day. Most likely a 6-hour hearing would be sufficient.
Thank you. Mr. Verhule?
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have very much to add to what Ms. Noakes said. The Surface Water Quality Bureau of the New Mexico Environment Department intends to participate in this matter. And Ms. Noakes is correct. We conferred last week and discussed potentially a November or shortly thereafter hearing date, which works better for the Surface Water Quality Bureau, primarily from a resource perspective. But otherwise, I concur with what Ms. Noakes said, and I have nothing further to add, so if there's any questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Verheul. Commissioners, any comments, questions, motions?
Madam Chair, Larry Dominguez. So I'll get the ball rolling here. I don't really have any questions on the petition itself. It appears the petition, the content of the petition covers the requirements within the NMAC for a valid petition. So with that said, I'll move to the point of scheduling. 2 points here. With the current situation in the state, with what the commission has before us, with other pending items, and as you pointed out, it's kind of a fluid situation. Although we have things scheduled for July, August, September, etc., we do not know with all the moving parts whether any of those would potentially delayed or pushed a month down the road. There's always that chance with the COVID-19 situation that we're going to have to be flexible on the already scheduled items. So I think it behooves us to look at pushing this out, considering it's not a time-sensitive situation, and that's not to diminish the ONR designation. I'm just saying we've got other pending matters before us. Also, I applaud the optimism on the time frame or the hourly frame for the ONRW. Having been through a few of these before myself, these tend to draw a lot of interest from the public, and I think we need to take that into consideration, that the potential could run more than the 6-hour part that was thrown out there. So with that said, I think the Environment Department's perspective into November or shortly after, although I don't know what the term shortly after may consist of, is probably a more realistic time frame to look at and allow the commission to get through these other items that are tentatively scheduled before the commission, but potentially could get rescheduled given the current situation. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Dominguez. I actually completely agree with your comments on the time estimates. In my experience, these designations do tend to generate a lot of public interest and public comment, and we do want to make sure that we're ready for that in terms of our time estimate. I have to say I have not looked ahead to the calendar in November. Cody, do you have a calendar handy? What would our meeting date, regular second Tuesday of November be?
Yeah, just give me 1 second and I will find that out for you. That would be November 10th.
Okay, so well before Thanksgiving. Any other commissioners have any comments on this?
This is Commissioner Thompson. One thing that I'm a little bit concerned about is if we push this too far, if we push this into 2021, do we run into conflict with review of the stream standards? Because it's my understanding that that is going to happen in spring of 2021, and that is a very lengthy process.
Mr. Verheuvel, can you give us some information on that triennial review schedule?
Yes, Madam Chair. At this time, the Surface Water Quality Bureau intends to petition the Commission in August, or file our petition shortly before our August meeting and request a hearing on the triennial review in August. And we're not even through with the scoping at this point. So I think at that time, we'd be able to discuss an actual schedule with the Commission. But thinking about that happening at some time in 2021 is certainly not unreasonable.
So would that be August of 2020 or August 21?
2020, this year, is when we will petition and ask for a hearing.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And we do not have a required time frame for setting a hearing on rulemaking. Is that correct, Council Sanchez?
That's correct.
Okay. Completely separate and apart from the suggestion of the parties looking at the matters assigned to various hearing officers, it looked to me like Felicia Orth was sort of the next up on our rotation. And so for a lot of reasons, I would suggest that we appoint her as our hearing officer. Commissioners, does anyone want to make a motion at this point?
Madam Chair, this was a follow-up question for Jim Verheuvel. John, you had indicated the Environment Department was suggesting November or December from a resource standpoint. Do either of those months work better for the Environment?
I'm just going to throw in there that was Commissioner Dominguez for the record.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Dominguez, my client has indicated that November or later are better. I think more time is always good, but I would say the Environment Department does not have a strong preference between those 2 months.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the only other thing that I would throw out just from other commissioners to wrap their head around, and we're talking about the length of time for these items. The parties look at it from their perspective of how long it will take them to present. The flip side that we need to take into consideration is the length of time that the Commission will need to deliberate. And with these potential lengthy hearings that have a lot of input from the public, the deliberation process tends to be lengthier. because the commission has more information in front of them that needs to be digested as the commission deliberates. So you can count on the deliberation side of it taking a lengthy amount of time typically.
Thank you, Commissioner Dominguez. I would also point out this will be the first time this full commission has heard an outstanding natural resource waters designation matter, and we do have some experienced commissioners who have heard these before. We have other commissioners who are not going to be familiar with this type of matter, or the, burdens of proof or standards or any of that. And I think that also suggests it may take us some time to work our way through this. So, I do think I certainly agree that this is likely to take more than one day. So, with that being said, I'm still waiting for a motion.
Madam Chair, just a follow-up question for Commission Administrator or for you. Do we have anything scheduled for December?
Commissioner Dominguez, no, not that I know of.
I'm not aware of anything either, Commissioner Dominguez. I would suggest we might want to consider this in November. We don't currently have anything happening in October, and we have a lot of months ahead of us where additional things can be filed, and there does seem to be some push for people to think, oh gosh, it's almost the end of the year, it's time to file something, and Decembers tend to get very busy. So if we could do this in November, I would suggest that might be a good way to go, since the parties have indicated they think they could be ready then.
Madam Chair, this is Kirk Patton. I was just looking at my schedule, and I will not be able to make the November meeting to participate.
Thank you for letting us know that, Commissioner Patton.
Person through it?
Yes. Who is this?
This is Council Sanchez. I realize you called for a motion, but I'm, like everyone else, I'm trying to get a sense of what the case is going to look like going forward in terms of what kind of resources and time will be necessary. A question for Councilor Berhu. You indicated that the department intended to participate, and I didn't go for your words. Can you talk briefly about what the extent and nature of that what the department's participation is anticipated to be?
Council, yes, I can. At this time, we've done a preliminary review of the petition and certainly do not oppose it for any reason. However, we've preliminarily identified some areas where we believe there may be additional data that either needs to be gathered and or analyzed. And our participation will, pre-hearing, will be working with the petitioners to discuss where we think there may potentially be some gaps in the overall case. And then during the hearing itself and at the hearing itself, our participation would be in filling in some of those areas as needed if it's something that's perhaps best done by the department rather than by the petitioner themselves. But we do anticipate the petitioner being really the one primarily making the case for this designation.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Thompson. As you noted, we don't have anything scheduled for October. I'd like to ask the petitioner and NMED council, would it be possible to move the hearing up and hold it in October instead of November?
Mr. Thompson, this is John Vergil.
Has left the meeting.
That would be burdensome on the department to move it up to October. We would specifically request November or later.
Commissioner Thompson, I just wanted to point out, I'll give you just a minute, Ms. Noakes. The Surface Water Quality Bureau is one of our bureaus with the most challenging funding and resources right now. And given the special session coming up, I think they are very reasonably concerned that they may not be likely to have additional resources come their way in the next few months or half of this next fiscal year. And I am very sensitive to all that they are trying to do with the resources they have. So, Ms. Noakes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to say that, the petitioners this is a pressing matter for them. They really do think this is a priority. However, they are willing to be flexible as needed for both the Environment Department and with the Commissioner's schedule. And so we would support the November hearing date if there are no other conflicts, and we would prefer that over the December date if that's at all possible. I would also just like to note that, while we respect Now, the petition does meet all of the requirements of the ONRW regulations, and so we would just like to state that any gaps can be worked out via technical testimony and in coordination with the department, which the petitioners are more than willing to undertake.
We love it when parties work together. Thank you all. Mr. Sanchez, were you going to say something?
No, I was not.
Okay. Sorry.
Madam Chair, that might have been me signing in as Larry Dominguez. Follow-up question for Commissioner Patton. You mentioned you would not be available in November. With that given, was Damon Fish then going to have a proxy set in for you, or would we be absent Damon Fish if it was to be held in November?
Commissioner, I believe we could have a proxy sit in for us. The conflict I have involves something for my son. And if it were to get done earlier than anticipated, I could make the meeting. So I think if the commission chose to move forward with November, we could participate in some way.
Thank you, Commissioner Patton. And Madam Chair, the reason that I was asking that question in previous ONRW matters, I believe the insight and perspective that the Department of Game and Fish has is pretty important. So I would hate to have a situation where we did not have Game and Fish at the table. I would hate to see Commissioner Patton not be able to participate due to his vast experience related to fisheries and the stream waters.
Very good point. Thank you, Commissioner Dominguez, and I appreciate the importance of hearing from the Game and Fish Department on this matter, and I'm glad, Commissioner Patton, that there is some possibility you could attend if we did it in November, or provide someone else from Game and Fish to help us with this one. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Stacey Timmons.
Commissioner Timmons.
I just wanted to see if it's possible to host the meeting on a Wednesday, perhaps, so that Commissioner Patton could participate. I don't know if we're always locked into the Tuesdays, if that's a day where he's not available. We could keep it in November, but just have it on a different day of the week.
Would that help your schedule, Commissioner Patton, or is Wednesday also problematic?
Madam Chair, I'm checking my schedule. Wednesday would be better, but there's still a potential conflict on that day.
Well, Madam Chair, my suggestion is just if there's a possibility of opening it up to a different date so that we could hold it in November and make sure we have representation from Game and Fish.
Madam Chair, this is Howard. In order to break the logjam, I will make the motion that we hold the hearing on November 10th and that we grant to the chair the assignment of a hearing officer.
Do we have a second?
Madam Chair.
I second, Mr. Commissioner Thompson.
Any additional discussion of the motion, Commissioners? All right, Mr. Barnes, would you call the roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Okay, Commissioner Candelaria.
Yes.
Commissioner Sturton.
Yes.
Commissioner Dominguez.
Yes.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Yes.
Commissioner McWilliams.
Yes.
Commissioner Musharraf.
Yes.
Commissioner Patton.
Yes.
Madam Chair Pruitt.
Yes.
Commissioner Rader.
Yes.
Commissioner Cipher.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Timmons.
Yes.
And Commissioner Wade.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Thank you. Council Sanchez, do you think you could do an order for me on that one?
I could, and typically I get those out within the week from the meeting. I have some other boards and commissions that are, have more immediate matters that need to be attended to, so I may be a little longer in getting that out to you as well as the one on the other hearing that we've set.
Okay. If I can, I'll take a shot at it and send it to you, so we'll keep in touch on those. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Number 10 on our agenda is our next meeting and upcoming matters proposed. Our next meeting is June 10th. Is that right? June 11th. Tuesday, June 11th. I think reviewed the pending matters on our docket. We do not currently have anything scheduled for June. Is that correct, Mr. Barnes?
Yes, that's correct. There's nothing scheduled for June right now. And also, just to make a quick correction,
Has left the meeting.
The meeting will be on June 9th.
Okay, thank you. June 9th, okay. So it's possible if we don't have any matters before us, we may not hold that meeting. It's pretty common for the commission to eliminate one meeting during the summer to save commissioners travel time, but that isn't a problem now. But maybe it will be on June 9th. So one can only hope.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Cipher. Was 20-07, were we trying to consider that in June?
No, we had put that in July. That and the 20-04, the ACME compliance order appeal.
Very good, thank you.
Any other comments or questions about the upcoming matters, commissioners?
Madam Chair, this is Larry Dominguez. Now your vice president is in charge of listening to me, but to help with planning purposes and also given Cody's good fortune of getting into law school, but our bad fortune, to try to plan ahead, and I think Commissioner Timmons had brought it up earlier about giving the commission a revised schedule, and the further ahead we can get any documents to review or packages, that would be great. As I want to emphasize with some of these matters that we have coming up, it's imperative that the commission be fully briefed and aware, and the commissioners having time to get through those lengthy documents is really critical so that when we do meet, we can move as quickly through items as possible. So based on Cody's situation, any pre-planning that he can do would be fabulous for the commission, as well as I think that helps out the commissioners with doing homework well ahead of time. That's just food for thought. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good point, Commissioner Dominguez. Thank you for that. And we will do everything we can to get as much as possible up on the website and available to the commissioners ahead of time. I will tell you our rule, at least on the rulemaking one we have for July, the notice of intent to file technical testimony allows filing it's either 10 days or 15 days ahead of the hearing. So there's only so far in advance that we can get those, and we will get those up as soon as possible. We do not have to wait for the 10-day draft agenda time period. That's a very good suggestion. And in addition to just putting them up, I will ask Cody to send out an email to commissioners when things are up and available for their review. I'll remind people that certainly for that rulemaking one, the commission's rules require that narrative testimony, that direct testimony be filed in narrative form with that statement of intent. So, we can all read the testimony, at least for that hearing, ahead of time. And as the hearing officer on that one, in the interest of time and the fact that we have two matters we're likely to hear at the July hearing, my intent and my direction in the scheduling order is to just have the witnesses do a very brief summary of their testimony rather than reading it out loud into the record. It will already be in the record in written form, but that's, it will be very important for commissioners, therefore, to read that ahead of time. So thank you for that reminder. So with that, at 10:55, I will call the meeting to a close and adjourn. Thank you all for participating. It's nice to see you all. Thank you for staying safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madam Chair.